The call came in on an ordinary afternoon. A voice on the other end, uncertain but urgent, spoke the words that would change everything. "There is a horse lying in a field. She hasn't moved all day." Nectarios and his team at Athens Happy House knew these calls too well. They had rescued countless animals over the years, dogs abandoned on roadsides, cats left in cardboard boxes, donkeys worked until they could work no more. But something in the caller's voice told him this would be different. He gathered his team, and they drove to Evia as quickly as the winding roads would allow. What they found when they arrived will stay with them forever. In the middle of a barren field, beneath the unforgiving Greek sun, lay a horse. Her body was collapsed in the dirt, her ribs pressing sharply against skin that seemed too thin to hold them. Her neck was stretched out flat against the ground, and her breathing was so shallow that from a distance one might have thought she was already gone. Flies covered her body. They crawled across her closed eyes, gathered around her mouth, and she did not react. She had no strength left to twitch them away. When Nectarios knelt beside her and tried to lift her head, it dropped back down hard like a stone. The veterinarian who accompanied them performed his examination quickly but thoroughly. Severe dehydration, extreme starvation, zero muscle strength. Her body had begun to consume itself just to keep her heart beating. The diagnosis was grim, and the vet spoke the words no one wanted to hear. She cannot stand. She may not survive the transport. This was the decision point that every rescuer dreads. Leave her here to die in peace, or risk hastening her death by trying to save her. Some would say the humane choice was to let her go quietly. But Nectarios looked at this horse, really looked at her, and he saw something the statistics couldn't measure. He saw a life that still wanted to be lived. "We're taking her," he said. 4 strong men positioned blankets beneath her body. On the count of 3, they lifted together. Her body hung limp between them, heavy with exhaustion and surrender. Carefully, step by step, they carried her to the trailer and placed her inside. No one spoke during the long drive back to Athens. The only sounds were the rumble of the engine and the shallow breathing of a horse named Marianthe, who did not yet know that her story was just beginning. When Marianthe arrived at Athens Happy House, the team handled her with the gentleness reserved for the most fragile things. They lifted her from the trailer and placed her on the soft ground of the sanctuary. She still could not move. The veterinarian pulled Nectarios aside. His voice was low and his eyes were kind but honest. "You should prepare yourselves," he said. "I don't think she'll make it through the night." The team understood. They had been here before, with other animals too broken by neglect to recover. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give a creature is simply the promise that they won't die alone. So they set about making Marianthe comfortable for what they believed would be her final hours. They cleaned her wounds, dabbing gently at the sores that had formed where her bones pressed against the ground. They wet her lips with water, letting the moisture seep into her parched mouth. They offered tiny amounts of soft food, though she did not lift her head to eat. As darkness fell over the sanctuary, Nectarios made a decision. He would stay beside her through the night. He pulled a blanket around his shoulders and settled onto the ground next to Marianthe's still form. "You're not alone," he whispered to her. "Whatever happens, you're not alone anymore." The hours passed slowly. The stars wheeled overhead, and the sanctuary was quiet except for the soft sounds of sleeping animals. Nectarios watched Marianthe's side rise and fall, each breath a small victory against the odds. Everyone thought morning would not come for her. Everyone was wrong. Against every expectation, Marianthe survived the first night, and the second, and the third. But survival and recovery are two very different things. Marianthe was alive, but she could not move. Her muscles had atrophied so completely from starvation that they simply did not respond to her brain's commands. She lay on her side, breathing, blinking, but utterly helpless. The team launched into round-the-clock emergency care. Every 2 hours, day and night, someone would come to her side with food, small, soft portions that her weakened digestive system could handle. Water was administered by syringe, carefully measured to avoid overwhelming her fragile body. Her wounds were treated and cleaned, dressed and redressed. For the first month, the routine was grueling. Every single day, multiple times per day, the team would gather around Marianthe and physically lift her to her feet. It took several people working together, supporting her weight, positioning her legs beneath her. She could only stand for 2 minutes at a time, sometimes less. Then her legs would buckle and she would collapse back to the ground. Each fall was terrifying. The team would hold their breath, watching her body crumple, praying that this time wouldn't be the fall that broke something beyond repair. There were moments of doubt, dark moments when the team wondered if they were helping her or hurting her. Was this kindness, or were they prolonging her suffering? The question haunted them during the long nights when Marianthe lay still and the work seemed endless. But stopping meant certain death. And so they continued, 2 hours at a time, all day and all night. One small act of care after another, building towards something none of them could yet see. Horses are not meant to lie down for long periods. Their bodies are designed to stand, and when they cannot, things begin to go wrong quickly. Pressure builds on their internal organs, blood circulation becomes compromised, the weight of their own bodies begins to cause damage. The veterinarian explained this to Nectarios in plain terms. If she continues to lie down through the nights, her organs will fail. We will lose her. The problem was obvious. Marianthe could not stand on her own. The solution was far less clear. Nectarios and his team began to work on something they had never attempted before. They would build a custom lifting mechanism, a stable with a support system that could hold Marianthe upright through the night while she slept. It sounded simple enough in theory. In practice, it was anything but. They worked for days, measuring and adjusting, testing and modifying. The contraption had to be strong enough to support Marianthe's weight, but gentle enough not to cause her additional pain. It had to allow her to rest while keeping her on her feet. The first time they tried it, everyone held their breath. The mechanism engaged slowly, and Marianthe's body began to rise. She trembled violently as her legs took weight for the first time in weeks. The team stood ready to catch her if something went wrong. But nothing went wrong. For the first time since her rescue, Marianthe slept standing up. Her body swayed gently in the support system, but she did not fall. Her breathing deepened. Her muscles, freed from the constant pressure of lying down, began to receive the blood flow they so desperately needed. That night became the turning point. The night when death stopped feeling inevitable and hope began to feel possible. Weeks passed. The routine continued, feedings every 2 hours, physical therapy sessions, nights in the lifting stable. But something was changing. The team began to notice tiny muscle responses that hadn't been there before. A professional physiotherapist joined the team, working with Marianthe daily. She massaged the atrophied muscles, manipulated the stiff joints, encouraged movement where movement had seemed impossible. It was painstaking work, measured in millimeters rather than miles. One day, during a physical therapy session, Marianthe moved a hoof. It was a small movement, barely perceptible, but the therapist noticed. She called the others over. They watched, holding their breath. Another hoof moved, then another. 2 steps, 3 steps. Then something remarkable happened. For the first time since she had been rescued from that field in Evia, Marianthe did not collapse. She stood there, wobbling slightly, her legs trembling with effort, but she stood. A volunteer cried out. Everyone came running: Nectarios, the veterinarian, the caregivers who had spent countless sleepless nights keeping her alive. They stood in a circle around Marianthe and watched as she took one full step forward. The yard erupted. There were tears, so many tears, and laughter and embraces. These were people who had seen so much suffering, who had experienced so many losses, and yet here was this moment of pure, unexpected joy. Later, Nectarios would try to describe what that moment felt like. He said it was like winning the lottery of life. Progress, once it began, continued steadily. Marianthe walked a little farther each day. Her steps grew stronger, more confident. The terrible trembling in her legs began to subside. Her weight slowly returned. The sharp angles of her ribs began to soften beneath new flesh. The dull, flat quality of her coat gave way to something with a hint of shine. But the most profound changes were in her eyes. When she first arrived at the sanctuary, Marianthe's eyes had been empty. There was no light in them, no curiosity, no life. She looked at nothing because she expected nothing. She was an animal who had been abandoned, left to die, and she had accepted that fate. Now her eyes began to change. They followed movement. They showed interest. When someone approached with food, she would turn her head toward them. When a bird landed nearby, she would watch it. The day came when the team decided she was ready to go outside. Not just into the yard where she had been recovering, but out into the open prairie beyond the sanctuary grounds. They walked beside her slowly, ready to support her if needed. But Marianthe walked on her own. One step, then another, out through the gate and into the wide green space she had never seen. She stopped. The wind caught her mane and lifted it gently. She raised her head, something she had been unable to do for so long, and she breathed deeply. The team stood in silence, watching. There are moments in life that words cannot adequately capture, and this was one of them. This horse, who had been left to die in a barren field, was now standing in the grass with the wind in her hair and the sun on her back. This moment had once been impossible. Now it was simply real. As Marianthe settled into life at the sanctuary, something unexpected began to happen. She started making friends. Athens' Happy House is home to many animals, each with their own story of rescue and recovery. There are dogs who were once strays, cats who were abandoned, and farm animals who were saved from lives of exploitation. In this unusual family, Marianthe found companions no one could have predicted. First, there was the turkey. He was a bold creature, unafraid of anything, who strutted around the sanctuary as if he owned the place. For some reason known only to himself, he became attached to Marianthe. During feeding times, he would walk beside her, staying close to her large hooves with complete trust. Marianthe, for her part, tolerated him with gentle patience. Then there was the cat, a small sanctuary cat, gray and white, who had the run of the entire property, but chose to spend her time near Marianthe. She would curl up beside Marianthe's legs when the horse rested, a tiny warm presence against the massive body of her friend. These friendships seemed to complete something in Marianthe. The horse, who had known only abandonment and isolation, now experienced connection and companionship. She became gentler, calmer, more patient than ever. Grooming became her favorite time of day. When the caregivers would come with brushes to tend to her coat, Marianthe would close her eyes and stand perfectly still. The feeling of being cared for, of being touched with kindness rather than cruelty or indifference. This was perhaps the greatest gift the sanctuary gave her. A horse once abandoned was now deeply loved. And she knew it. Marianthe will never work again. She will never carry a rider, never pull a cart, never do any of the things that horses are so often forced to do until their bodies break down. That part of her life, whatever it may have been, is over. She is officially retired. Every day now unfolds with a gentle rhythm. Mornings begin with soft food, specially prepared for her aging digestive system. There are walks through the sanctuary grounds where she can move at her own pace and rest whenever she needs. There is companionship with her turkey friend, her cat friend, and the many humans who have come to love her. There is safety. Perhaps this is the most important thing of all. After a life that ended in abandonment and near death, Marianthe now knows that she is protected. No one will leave her in a field to die. No one will forget about her. She matters, and she is cared for. The field in Evia where she was found has been replaced by a sanctuary. The dirt where she lay dying has given way to grass where she walks freely. The loneliness has been replaced by love. These are Marianthe's golden years, and they are golden indeed. Marianthe was thrown away. Someone looked at this horse, a living, feeling creature capable of pain and fear and loneliness, and decided she was no longer worth keeping alive. She was not old. She was not useless. She was simply unwanted. One decision saved her. When Nectarios knelt beside her in that field, he could have chosen to turn away. He could have accepted the veterinarian's prognosis and left her to die in peace. No one would have blamed him. Sometimes there is nothing to be done. But he chose differently. He chose to try. That choice, made in a moment, without certainty of success, led to thousands of hours of care. It led to sleepless nights and anxious days. It led to a custom-built lifting stable and physical therapy sessions and feedings every 2 hours. It led to a horse named Marianthe standing in an open field with the wind in her mane. Thousands of people now follow Marianthe's recovery online. They have watched her progress from a dying animal to a thriving one. They have celebrated her first steps and her first walks outside. They have seen what is possible when someone chooses not to look away. Her story proves something important. Starvation is not the end. Collapse is not the end. Abandonment is not the end, as long as someone chooses to act.